Yeah, we're live.
Hi.
Hi,
Yes, we are
everybody.
live.
Good evening. Good evening, everybody. We do not see much people. So, we were talking about, poetry meets this evening just before we came live on Facebook. And we're live on YouTube also. Yeah, so poetry meets Chandrama as a performer. I would love to hear from you, Chandrama. How is it performing your performing poems, and why so much performance these days?
I think I'm really glad that poetry performances have increased considerably. I started performing in Bangalore, I think 12 years back from
Hmm.
Urban Solace, which was at
Hmm.
that time the only place where you could perform poetry.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
since then, there has been such a tremendous growth in
Hmm.
poetry performances. And I think it's amazing because earlier poetry was, people only read poetry. Nobody really performed, or even if somebody performed, it was usually, to create a video. It was hardly for a live audience. And
Yeah.
only certain celebrated poets read their poems.
Yes. Yes.
But I think after these open mics started, or after these poetry performances started, it is it is a different feeling to hear a poem from the poet, like
Yes.
what has gone into that poem. And over the years, I have myself felt that people relate to poetry more when they hear it, because there,
Hmm.
you're seeing expressions, there's voice
Hmm.
modulation, there's
Hmm.
much more goes into it when you are reading a poem to someone. Like,
Yeah.
you want to read a poem to a lover, or you want to read a poem to a friend, or you want to
Yeah.
read a poem to a child, because
Yes.
I think
Yes.
the voice just adds to it. So I'm
Yes.
really happy about the way the poetry scene is getting, especially in Bangalore. uh,
Yes.
Before COVID, I think I was performing pretty much every weekend, even during COVID, online. But
Hmm. Hmm.
I absolutely love performing poetry.
Hmm. And I wanted to ask you, what is the difference between an earlier जो कवि सम्मेलन होते थे? It's not that it's a new phenomenon. It's just been modernized a lot now. They have become a total poetry meets. So
Right.
what was the difference between those kavi sammelans and what happens now?
Yeah,
In
I remember. Yeah, I remember attending some Kavi Sammelans in the past, like quite some time back. I think
yeah.
the biggest difference between Kavi Sammelan and these poetry open mics, I think, is Kavi Sammelan mein the poets are chosen. They are invited. There are only these five poets, and then there is an audience who goes to hear
Hmm.
these poets.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
think for in open mics, what happens is, of course, there are featured events also, but the way I started was open mics. In open mics, you can go and read your work even if you are not an established poet.
Chandrama, if you can interrupt you,
Yeah.
your audio, if you can recheck your audio a bit, it's either echoing or there's a kind of distortion in your voice.
Okay. Is it better?
Yeah, much better
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
I don't know
Maybe
how.
it was earphone. Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Is it still echoing? Is it still?
Yeah, there is a slight echo, but yeah. Can you speak more? Then I'll tell you.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So I think in Kavi Sammelan, the poets were selected, and you could only listen to those poets. There was no open mic in a Kavi Sammelan. You could
Hmm.
not read your own work in a Kavi Sammelan. I think
Hmm.
that has changed. So a lot of
And
new
the
talented
language
poets,
also, right?
yes, the language was Hindi, Urdu.
Hmm.
Any other language was there were, I think, in Bombay and in other parts of Maharashtra, there still are people who read Marathi poetry as well,
Hmm.
but it is not as popular as Hindi, Urdu.
Hmm. Hmm.
So again, then you're limited by a language. You have to understand that language, and
Mm.
you have to have that ear for that
Yeah,
kind of poetry. Like when I was growing up, I didn't really follow Urdu that well.
yeah, yes.
So I think with open mics, is there are so many young people who are writing and
Mm.
writing brilliant stuff.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
are getting access to these young poets, and I think their journey as a poet is getting a little more stronger because
yes,
they have access and exposure.
yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah, yes. Yeah. We'll take a small pause here.
hmm.
Shall we take a small pause
Sure,
here?
sure, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.